A dog enters the courtroom and stares at the accused. Seconds later, the judge discovers something that changes everything. Before we dive into this story, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. It's always awesome to see how far our stories are reaching. The clock struck 9:03 a.m. when the oak door of the Greenwood County Superior Court slammed shut with a solemn thud. The courtroom was packed. Every wooden bench creaked under the tense shifting of the audience. The air felt heavy, almost suffocating, as if the truth itself refused to come out. William Bill Carver, a textile industry tycoon with a face like stone and a calculating gaze, sat in the defendant's chair, dressed in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit. He showed no fear, no guilt. His wife, Claire, was nowhere to be seen. His lawyer, the renowned James Jim Larson, clutched a leather briefcase that seemed to hold more secrets than documents. Across from him stood prosecutor Sarah Bennett, her blonde hair pulled into a tight bun, her eyes like ice. She was ready to begin what would be the most shocking trial of the year. Every word she spoke was deliberate, every pause perfectly timed. Sarah wasn't just seeking a conviction, she was after redemption. Judge Margaret Holmes, a woman with a stern face and a deep voice, called for silence before declaring the session open. That's when it happened. A noise, soft at first, then persistent. A bark, another, and one more. The courtroom doors burst open, and a German shepherd with dark fur and eyes like burning coals strode in with purpose. It didn't run or seem scared. It walked through the crowd as if it knew exactly where to go. When it reached the front of the bench, it stopped, raised its head, and barked 3 times. Not at the judge, not at the prosecutor, not at the audience, at Bill Carver. The man barely blinked, but his fingers tightened on the armrest of his chair. Sarah froze. The judge ordered someone to remove the animal, but no one moved. It was as if the entire room was hypnotized by the dog's presence. Finally, a guard stepped forward, but the dog growled softly, lowering its ears in distrust. That's when they noticed the worn collar around the dog's neck. Hanging from it was a rusty, old-fashioned key, the kind you don't see anymore. Sarah spotted it instantly. "Stop," she shouted. "Don't touch it. That key. It could be evidence." The judge, surprised but alert, nodded. "This court will take a recess. Prosecutor Bennett, request a warrant to examine that key." And so what began as a routine hearing turned into a mystery. A stray dog, still nameless, with no apparent owner, had shifted the trial's fate with 3 simple barks. No one knew it yet, but that animal wasn't there by chance. Its name, though not yet spoken, would soon be known to all: justice. The afternoon settled over Greenwood County with a heavy sigh. The sky, draped in a blanket of lead-gray clouds, seemed to foreshadow the storm brewing not just in the weather, but in the hearts of those who witnessed the bizarre scene that morning. No one talked about the trial without mentioning the German shepherd. Some called it the ghost dog, others the 4-legged prophet, but for Sarah Bennett it was more than a symbol. It was a living clue. The prosecutor spent hours combing through court records, searching for any hint about the key hanging from the dog's collar. Finally, the warrant arrived. Armed with the court order and joined by 2 federal agents, Sarah headed to the storage unit, whose address was etched in tiny, barely legible letters on the back of the key. The place was a secluded building, windowless, tucked behind an old abandoned factory. The lock groaned as the key turned, as if it hadn't been used in years. The smell of stale dust and rusted metal hit them as they stepped inside. Justice, the German shepherd now trailing Sarah, stuck close to her side. Though no one knew where he came from or who he belonged to, the dog followed her with a loyalty that felt ancient. As they entered the storage unit, his ears perked up and his nose began sniffing intently. "There's something here," Sarah muttered, shining a flashlight into the dim space. Behind a false wall, Justice started scratching furiously. One of the agents, alerted, tapped the spot with a metal rod. The hollow echo confirmed it. With a few makeshift tools, they broke through the flimsy panel. Inside, neatly arranged rows of numbered metal boxes awaited. Sarah opened the first one. Bank statements, wire transfer records, contracts signed under fake names. Each file was a dagger aimed at the heart of Bill Carver's empire. Money funneled through offshore accounts, illegal payments, printed emails with incriminating conversations. Everything was meticulously organized. This wasn't just a hideout, it was a personal archive, a shrine to crime. One of the agents paused, jaw dropped. This isn't just corruption. It's an entire network. Sarah felt a knot in her chest. She knew she was up against something big, but she hadn't imagined being this close to the root. Justice sat in front of the open box, as if he understood they'd reached a point of no return. Then, Sarah turned her gaze to the dog. His dark, steady eyes watched in silence. "Who trained you for this?" she asked softly, almost like a secret tossed to the wind. Justice's sharp bark was his only reply. As they left the storage unit, while the agents catalogued the evidence, Sarah looked up at the heavy sky. The storm finally broke. Thick, heavy raindrops washed away the dust of the past, but nothing could erase what they'd just uncovered. The next morning brought a deceptive calm. The rain had stopped, but the air still buzzed with the electricity of things left unsaid, of truths about to be revealed. In her office, Sarah Bennett held a copy of the key found on Justice's collar. She'd studied it for hours. Every scratch, every curve in the metal whispered of the past. A knock at the door interrupted her. It was a court clerk with a crumpled file in hand. Inside was a name: Henry Hank Thompson, a retired locksmith. According to an old record, he'd crafted a series of custom keys under a private contract with a company that, after quick digging, was indirectly tied to Bill Carver. Sarah didn't waste time. She drove alone to a small town north of Greenwood County. Hank's cabin was nestled among pines and fog. A tall man with gray hair and a sharp, weathered face opened the door. His eyes were cold, almost icy. "Prosecutor Bennett," he said, unsurprised. "I figured you'd show up." Sarah narrowed her eyes. "Will you let me in?" The man nodded curtly. Justice, as if sensing the place held answers, stepped forward and sat by the unlit fireplace. Inside, the cabin was dusty but orderly. On an old workbench lay molds, unfinished keys, and faded photographs. One showed Hank next to a younger man, Bill Carver. "I worked for him," Hank admitted bluntly. "Paid in cash, always. Never used his real name, but I knew who he was." Sarah placed the key on the table. Hank studied it. His wrinkled hands trembled slightly. "Yeah, I made it. One of my last jobs. He insisted it have no duplicates, no record. Paid me triple to keep quiet. Did you know what it was for?" "No, but I heard things. Voices from his car, talk of transfers, codes, dirty stuff. I thought if I stayed quiet it'd all fade away. I was wrong." Sarah leaned closer. "Will you testify in court?" The silence stretched long. The cold air in the room felt heavier than the unlit fireplace. "I will," Hank said finally, "but on one condition." "What's that?" He looked at the dog, sitting with the grace of an ancient guardian. "I want protection. For me, and for him." Sarah frowned. "Him?" Hank nodded. He stood, walked to a box in the corner, and pulled out an old harness with a name etched on it. "Justice. That dog's no stray. I trained him on my land. Bill brought him to me. He was his. Then he abandoned him when he wasn't useful anymore. But he came back. He came back for justice." Sarah felt the world crack open inside her. The dog who'd sparked this case and had been raised by the man now on trial. Justice stood, as if he understood the weight of the words. He walked to Sarah and for the first time rested his head against her leg. No words were needed. Fate had spoken. The tension in the Greenwood County Superior Court was suffocating. Sarah Bennett returned with solid evidence, a witness ready to talk, and a story that would change the trial forever. But she knew nothing was won yet. Bill Carver had power, connections, and a legal team ready to tear down anything to save his spotless image. As preparations for the trial's resumption moved forward, Sarah requested that the boxes found in the storage unit be transported under tight security to the district attorney's forensic archive. Every document, every file had to be logged, sorted, and sealed under court order. Justice, now officially recognized as a key part of the investigation, followed Sarah through the building's hallways like a noble shadow. No one dared shoo him away. He wasn't the stray dog who crashed the trial anymore. He was justice, the living symbol of a buried truth. In the archive room, forensic experts began opening the boxes under supervision. Among bank records and forged contracts, an unmarked envelope caught their eye. Inside were photographs, dozens of them, some blurry, others crystal clear. Unknown faces, stacks of cash, weapons, and in the center of several, Bill Carver. In one particularly chilling image, Carver stood with two shadowy men in a lavish room. a young girl in the background. The photo was taken by a hidden camera. The envelope also held a handwritten note. "If something happens to me, you know who did it. Keep this safe. Protect it. He controls everything." Sarah felt a shiver run down her spine. Justice beside her let out a low, almost inaudible growl. The dog's instincts never failed. Someone had been there, watching, hiding in the walls of power. A forensic technician, blonde and serious, approached. "Prosecutor, there's more," she said, holding a dark blue folder. "This isn't signed or logged, but it's got documents from the Fort Pine Military Canine Lab. Looks like Justice was part of a tactical training program before being handed to a civilian." "To Carver?" Sarah asked, torn between disbelief and anger. "Yes, the paperwork confirms it." Sarah closed her eyes for a moment. The puzzle was coming together. Justice wasn't just trained as a guard dog. He'd been prepared for intelligence operations, and Carver had been his owner. He trained him, shaped him, then tossed him aside. But Justice never forgot, and that's why he came back. Before leaving the archive, Sarah ran her hand over Justice's head with a mix of gratitude and respect. The dog met her gaze with the dignity only the righteous carry. "I don't know how you did it, old friend," she whispered, "but you just handed us the monster's heart." That night, as the city slept, someone watched from a dark car parked outside the courthouse. A lighter sparked in the shadows. Bill Carver's face, cold as marble, reflected in the glass. "I underestimated you, Sarah. And that damn dog, too." The war was just beginning. The courtroom was quieter than ever. The clock read 8:57 a.m., but no one spoke. Tension hung like thick fog. All eyes were on Bill Carver, who, in a crisp midnight blue suit, feigned calm, but his clenched jaw and veined hands betrayed the storm inside. Sarah Bennett stood before the bench, holding a sealed folder. Her blue eyes didn't waver. At her side, like a loyal shadow, Justice stood alert, ears up. There was more than instinct in his gaze. There was purpose. Judge Margaret Holmes gave the floor. "Prosecutor Bennett, you may proceed." Sarah took a deep breath. "Your Honor, what you're about to hear isn't just evidence. It's an unwilling confession, captured in documents and silences that scream louder than any voice." With a gesture, she turned on a projector. The screen showed a silent but clear video. Bill Carver entering the storage unit weeks before the trial, alone, carrying a box. His face was tense, his hands gloved. The judge frowned. "What's in that box?" "The envelope with the photographs, Your Honor," Sarah replied without hesitation. "He hid them. The storage unit was his. The key, custom made. The dog, trained by him. And the abandonment, his choice. It all fits." A murmur rippled through the room. Carver barely moved. His lawyer called for an objection, but it was overruled. Sarah wasn't done. "I also have," she continued, "a recorded statement from the locksmith, Hank Thompson, confirming he made that unique key, plus a report from the Fort Pine Tactical Training Lab, proving Justice was trained in advanced obedience, document detection, and civilian protection. He was meant to serve and ended up discarded." Sarah's eyes burned with contained outrage. "But most importantly," she added, "this." She placed a speaker on the table and pressed play. A distorted voice from a hidden recording played, "If something happens to me, it was him. Carver. He's got connections everywhere, but someone knows him. Someone doesn't forget. That dog, he's his curse." The impact was instant. Dead silence, then a whisper of shock. Justice, still as stone, stared at Carver. The tycoon looked away for the first time in the trial. Sarah closed her folder. Her voice was softer but firmer. "Justice isn't just a witness. He's a survivor. And today, he's a symbol of justice." The judge called for an immediate recess. Carver stood and walked to a private room, escorted by 2 guards. But the arrogance was gone from his face. Only an old fear remained, as if something beyond the law was closing in. As the room cleared, Justice stayed in the center, as if he knew his mission wasn't over yet. The hours after the recess were the longest in the recent history of the Greenwood County Superior Court. The building itself seemed to pulse with every echoing step in its halls. The tension wasn't just legal, it was spiritual, as if the walls themselves awaited justice, and at the heart of it all, him, Justice. The German shepherd who'd crossed the line of instinct to become a beacon of a long-suppressed truth. Sarah Bennett didn't rest. While Bill Carver hid in a private room under guard, she worked tirelessly with the forensic team. Something nagged at her. Her faint detail in the intercepted emails. One coded word kept appearing: broken glass. Sarah requested access to Carver's recent transaction history using an expanded warrant. It didn't take long to find something odd. A large payment to an art gallery shuttered years ago. The place called the Shattered Frame had burned down, but someone had secretly rebuilt it. Without wasting time, Sarah headed to the site, joined only by Justice and a trusted agent. The gallery was surrounded by crumbling structures and wild overgrowth. The doors unlocked. Inside, the air was thick, almost damp. The interior glowed with broken stained glass, filtering light like fragments of memory. Justice moved ahead, sniffing the floor. He stopped suddenly at a trapdoor hidden under a blue velvet tapestry. With a low growl, he scratched the edge until a metal ring was visible. The agent forced the lock. The trapdoor opened, revealing a narrow staircase descending to a large basement with unfinished concrete walls. At the far end, a locked metal cabinet with a digital keypad. The code was found in the encrypted emails. When they opened it, the impact was total. Hard drives, recordings, videos of illegal deals, hidden transfers, rigged bids, and most damning, a clip of Bill Carver pressuring a judge, offering cash for an acquittal. Sarah lowered her gaze. This was the final proof. No more excuses. Justice approached slowly and sat beside her. There was no anger or rage in his eyes, just calm. As if he knew this was the last link in a chain he'd started breaking with his first bark in court. "You did it again, partner," Sarah whispered, rubbing his neck. "You led us to the heart of his rot." At that moment, a shadow moved behind them. Sarah reacted instantly. The agent raised his weapon. A hooded man, armed, stepped from the corner, shouting, "This was never supposed to come out." But before he could fire, Justice lunged. A sharp, precise snarl. The attacker hit the ground, no chance to resist. His gun skidded away. Justice, trained to neutralize without killing, pinned the man until backup arrived. Sarah, still catching her breath, knew it for certain. This case wasn't just against Carver. It was against an entire corrupt system. And Justice, the dog forgotten by his former master, had become the spark that would burn the whole network down. The courtroom was packed, but no one breathed. Outside, rain pounded the windows with fury, as if the sky wanted a say in what was coming. It was the last day of the trial against Bill Carver. No legal maneuvers remained, no lies left to hold up. Only the truth, raw and sharp, stood between the accused and his fate. Sarah Bennett entered the courthouse dressed in black. Her silhouette carried an almost spiritual strength. She wasn't alone. At her side, as always since that first day, walked Justice. The German shepherd moved with a soldier's poise. His presence no longer caused surprise, only respect. He was a vital part of the process, a silent witness with a memory that spoke volumes. Judge Margaret Holmes opened the session with a firm voice, though her face showed the weight of the sentence to come. "Prosecutor Bennett," she said, "you have the floor for your closing statement." Sarah stood. She looked at the jury, then the accused, and finally at the dog resting at her feet like a living statue. This case isn't just about numbers and forged contracts. It's not just about money laundering or abuse of power. It's about who we are when no one's watching, about the silence that enables, and those who can't speak but say everything with their actions. Her voice didn't waver. Bill Carver didn't just betray the system. He betrayed those who trusted him. He abandoned a loyal creature trained to protect and discarded it like trash. A pause. "But what Carver never understood," she continued, "is that some things can't be bought. Loyalty, instinct, truth. Justice came back, not for revenge, but for justice. He led us, step by step, to the rotten roots of a criminal network, and he asked for nothing in return." The jury listened in utter silence. Some leaned forward, afraid to miss a word. Sarah reached down and gently touched Justice's head. "This dog, cast aside as worthless, is why justice can stand tall today, because he reminded us who we're supposed to be." The judge sent the jury to deliberate. The room cleared, but the air stayed heavy. Outside, the rain turned to a full storm. Hours later, the 12 jurors returned. Their faces were stern, resolute. The foreperson stood and spoke clearly. "The jury has reached a verdict. By unanimous decision, we find Bill Carver guilty on all charges." A collective gasp escaped the room. Carver lowered his head. He didn't protest, didn't speak. His silence was his only response. No masks remained, only ruins. Justice stood and took a step forward. He didn't bark. He just looked at the man who'd once been his master, and whom he'd now defeated, not with hate, but with truth. Sarah didn't cry, but her eyes shone with the glow of justice served, of memory honored, and of an unbreakable bond between her and the creature who'd made it possible. 2 months passed since the verdict. Greenwood County began to heal slowly, like waking from a long nightmare. The Carver case marked a turning point in the nation's legal history. Corruption was exposed. Several officials fell like dominoes after the tycoon's conviction. But beyond the legal uproar, one figure remained etched in the public's memory: Justice. The German shepherd who changed a trial's fate with 3 barks and unwavering loyalty became a legend. His image graced murals, news articles, statues in town squares, but he seemed untouched by the fame. He was the same, steady, silent, watchful, a guardian of truth. Sarah Bennett, now appointed Attorney General, lived in a modest house on the outskirts of town. She turned down interviews, awards, even political promotions. She accepted only one condition: that justice stay by her side. In her garden, among tall trees and stone paths, Justice could be seen daily patrolling the perimeter with the calm of someone who'd finally found his place. He didn't need to prove anything anymore. He didn't need to protect anyone. His mission was done. But one final scene remained. On an autumn afternoon, Sarah took him to a small hill north of town. There, in a clearing surrounded by pines, a lone gravestone stood among fallen leaves. It wasn't for anyone known, but Sarah had it placed. The inscription was simple: "Here lies the silence of those who never spoke." Justice heard them. Sarah knelt before the stone and placed a single white flower. Justice sat beside her. A soft breeze rustled his fur. There was no sadness, only peace. "Maybe we'll never know how many lives you touched," she said softly. "But I know. You saved me." Justice looked at her with deep, almost human eyes. Then, without a sound, he rested his head in her lap. Nothing more was needed. Above the clearing, the sun began to set, painting the sky in copper and purple. The story was over. Justice had spoken. And the hero just wanted to rest. A year has passed since Bill Carver was sentenced. A year since a dog's bark shattered the silence of a corrupt system. A year since justice took the form of a German shepherd named Justice. Today, Greenwood County is different. The old judicial system was torn down from within. New laws were passed to protect whistleblowers, regulate private campaign donations, and reform state contracts. The Carver case became a subject of study in law and criminology schools. It's officially known as the Silent Trial. Sarah Bennett, transformed by the experience, now leads a national program against institutional corruption. Tell me in the comments, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate this story so far? Your opinion means a lot to me. She travels the country training prosecutors, promoting ethics, and inspiring young lawyers. She never married. She's never been seen with a partner. Her heart, as those close to her say, belongs to something greater. To courage, to truth, and to justice. Claire Carver, the tycoon's wife, filed for divorce days after the verdict. She moved to a coastal town, lives quietly, and paints. In a rare interview, she said, "I was married to a man I never truly knew. Now, I just want peace." Hank Thompson, the locksmith, lives under a federal witness protection program. He gets letters from law students, kids, even cops thanking him for his courage. In his refurbished workshop, one key hangs on the wall. The first he made for Carver, the one Justice wore around his neck. Bill Carver, now in a maximum security prison, is isolated. He receives no visitors, writes no letters. But rumors say he talks to himself, muttering nonsense, and wakes up screaming, as if something invisible haunts him. They say he dreams of golden eyes watching him in the dark. And Justice, oh Justice, he lives peacefully at Sarah's home. He no longer joins missions or investigations, but sometimes he visits schools and hospitals for therapy and awareness programs. Kids love him. Teachers respect him. He enters quietly, sits, and everyone listens as if he's telling a story without words. Some say that at night he stares at the stars for long minutes, as if he hears something only he understands. Maybe it's the echo of the silences he broke, or maybe He's just grateful. The story ends, yes, but the legend is just beginning. Thank you so much for sticking with this story until the end. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps us a ton and motivates us to keep bringing new stories every week. And since you're here, take a moment to check out another one of our stories that's popping up on your screen. Big hug and see you next time. Stay well.